When Clyde told me to get out of his sight again, I suddenly had an epiphany. It turned out that I was the vicious supporting female character in a novel. I had been hovering around the male protagonist like a love-struck fool, conscientiously serving as a stumbling block between him and the female protagonist who fell from the sky. Until they got engaged, I was abandoned by the main character group, left in the heavy rain. I had a car accident and broke my leg. Hello, everyone. Welcome to my channel. Subscribe us to read wonderful stories every day. Now the story begins. After learning the ending, I was so scared that I immediately picked up my luggage. I raised 3 fingers and swore to the sky. Clyde, don't worry. I'm leaving right now. I promise I will never appear in front of you again in my life. And I will never get in your way. Luna, can you have some self-respect? I've already driven you away like this. And you still insist on staying and hovering around me. Are you? No. What did you say? After a while, it seemed that Clyde finally realized something. He paused and turned sideways to me. His tone became stern. What did you just say? Say it again. It suddenly became much quieter around us, and everyone secretly looked in our direction. The entire wealthy circle knew that I had liked to stick to Clyde's side since I was a child. Wherever he went, I went. When he studied piano as a specialty, I studied the violin in the next classroom. When he got into No. 1 middle school, I followed him there. When he chose the science major, I also chose science. Everyone said Luna was like the little tail of Clyde. It couldn't be shaken off. But in high school, he met new friends and started to get tired of me. He kept avoiding me. The words he said to me the most were to tell me to get lost. Luna, can you be more independent? Am I your boyfriend? Can't you stay away from me? I used to dismiss these words of Clyde's. Well, in fact, I had a pretty thick skin. After being scolded a few times, I would still be full of energy the next day and happily stick to him again. But it couldn't be like that now. I already knew that I was the vicious supporting female character. What could be more important than saving my life? I ignored Clyde's expression as stinky as dog shit, rummaged through my luggage on my own, and carried it to the center of the hotel lobby. Then I held my phone in front of him. I said sincerely and seriously, "Look, I'm not lying to you. Just a moment ago, I've already booked the plane ticket. I'm going back to school now. I will never pester you again in the future." A gloomy and cold gaze passed in front of me. For a while, Clyde didn't say anything. It was not until the real female protagonist, Hedda, came over and pulled his arm, muttering and complaining in a low voice. Then he turned his head to one side. He sneered. "Fine. Remember what you said today. Luna, get lost. Once you leave, don't come back." I readily agreed. I turned around and carried the suitcase and ran away. I returned to school the next morning. My dormitory roommate was still sleeping. When she stuck her head out of the quilt and saw me, she was obviously startled. She rubbed her eyes. "Luna, weren't you on a diving vacation with Clyde? Why did you come back all of a sudden? Could it be that you didn't find him?" I couldn't blame my roommate for asking that. Clyde had kept this trip a secret from me. He had won a major award in an international mathematics competition some time ago. To celebrate, he invited many of his good friends to go on a trip. Later, I can't remember where I heard about this, and I clung to him stubbornly, buying the next flight after his. I found the hotel according to the photos in the Instagram. Then as soon as I entered, before I could say a word, he directly blocked me outside the door. "Luna, what are you doing here? Did I invite you? Do you have any sense of propriety? Can you just go back?" After hearing the whole story, my roommate scratched her head. "So you just came back like this?" I was squatting down, packing my luggage, and didn't even look up. "Yeah, he drove me away like that. If I don't come back, I would be so insensitive." "Right." My roommate showed a puzzled expression. "Did you take the wrong medicine?" She scratched the tip of her nose. "He has driven you away so many times. Which time did you really give up obediently? Didn't you say that Clyde is just duplicitous and awkward, and as long as you warm his heart for a long time, you can always make him care?" Now that I think about it, how stupid that thought was. If I could have warmed his heart, would I have waited until now? I sighed and waved my hands frantically. "Stop joking. I've really turned over a new leaf. I will definitely stay far away from him now." My roommate yawned. "I don't believe it. The next moment, she widened her eyes. I took out an application form for a study exchange program in the UK from the bookshelf and then wrote my name on it stroke by stroke. The teacher said that there is an experimental project over there that is particularly suitable for me. I refused it without even thinking before. Now I'm going to give it a try. At this time, there was an awkward silence on Clyde's side. When Luna came, they were in the hotel lobby. They were preparing to transport their luggage upstairs. Someone hesitated for a moment, took out the room number they had booked on their phone, and handed it to Clyde. Clyde, do you think we should keep Luna's room, or cancel it? Before coming, they were discussing how many rooms to book. Clyde coughed twice at that time and said to include Luna. She's just a tag-along. She won't miss wherever I go. She has to chase after me. It's really annoying. Now, Clyde looked at the room right opposite him. He felt even more annoyed. He remembered the way the girl had vowed to draw a clear line with him just now, and he almost crushed the water bottle in his hand. Why keep it? Didn't she say that she would completely disappear in front of me in the future? Just let her disappear. Why bother about her? Many people looked at each other in dismay, until someone realized that Clyde was really angry this time. They quickly stepped forward and grabbed him. Forget it. Forget it. I think Luna was just talking. She has been chasing you for so long. Maybe she hasn't left yet. She's probably waiting for you to go and coax her. Clyde's expression improved a bit. He sneered coldly and thought, coax her. He would never do such a thing. Within 3 days, Luna would come crawling back on her own. That's just the way she was. It was the peak season now. The room might as well be kept for her. I told my parents about going to the UK. Although they were a bit surprised, they didn't show any objection. 4 days later, I gathered all the materials, filled out the application form, and handed it to my tutor. When she saw it, she was first a bit surprised. Then she quickly became happy. You've finally figured it out, Luna. There are many students from our school there, and they will take care of each other. You won't be left alone. I'll sign for you now and upload the documents online. Go back and pack your things. The flight is probably in about a week, and this batch of students from our school will go together. My tutor was a big shot in the industry and had many students all over the world. Since she said so, it seemed that the atmosphere in the experimental team over there should be good. I lowered my head and softly responded with an, Thinking like this, I came out of the teacher's office while holding the materials, and I had a little more expectation for my life in the near future. When I reached the bottom of the teaching building and was about to take a taxi to the city center to buy some necessary things, suddenly someone called out to me, Luna, why are you here? I turned around and looked. It was a classmate of Clyde's from the same major. In fact, I was about the same age as them. But for some reason, his friends all liked to call me Luna. This person had a good relationship with Clyde. He was originally going on the vacation too, but something happened at home temporarily, so he canceled the trip. He scratched the tip of his nose and walked towards me. Luna, did you come back early? I saw that Clyde and the others are still diving over there. It seems that they are having a great time and have posted a lot in their Instagram. Didn't you see it? I wasn't interested in these things. I waved my hand and was just about to politely decline the topic. But the other person had already turned his phone screen towards me. Clyde hardly ever updated his life on social media before. I didn't know what was going on these days. In the center of my sight, I could see that he had posted a lot of updates in a row. He was smiling happily in every photo. Sometimes he was lowering his head to organize his diving equipment. Sometimes he was sitting by the beach watching the sunrise. Without exception, the original female protagonist was by his side. The two of them were playing around, chatting and laughing. In the newly posted video today, their group rented a boat and went fishing and sea fishing together. Clyde caught a big fish. He turned around and looked at Hedda. The two of them smiled at each other tacitly. The sunlight shone down, freezing that scene beautifully. Some people who didn't know the situation asked in the comments section below, "Who is the girl next to him? She's so pretty. Could it be that we have a sister-in-law? Why haven't we seen Luna? It's so strange. Why mention Luna? Sister is sister, and sister-in-law is sister-in-law. We should make the relationship clear." Clyde didn't reply to any of the comments, but only singled out this sentence that mentioned me. Her. We broke off our relationship. This poor classmate obviously hadn't seen the newly posted update today, let alone the comments below. So I kindly pointed out what Clyde had said. Look, that's why I didn't go. The other person's face turned red all of a sudden. He looked at me hesitantly. Because of his embarrassment, he stuttered when speaking. Oh, no, Luna. I really didn't see it. I'm sorry. The taxi I had just hailed happened to come over. I waved my hand, smiled, and turned around to open the car door. It doesn't matter. Now that you've seen it, we've broken off our relationship. So don't tell me anything about him in the future. I don't care. But could I really not care at all? I didn't know either. After all, Clyde and I had been childhood friends and had known each other for so long. When I saw his understated words, broke off our relationship, my heart still felt a little sour. The supporting female character was just a supporting female character. How could she compare to the female protagonist who appeared out of the blue? I took a deep breath. I tried my best to get rid of the chaotic thoughts in my head and started to keep preparing the things I needed for going abroad. As long as I was busy, I wouldn't have any thoughts or emotions. I carried several big shopping bags back to the dormitory. After taking out the things I needed, I started to organize the textbooks and thesis collections on the bookshelf. My roommate also came over and helped me with the packing. She hadn't finished collecting the data for her thesis, so her tutor had asked her to stay during the winter vacation. Halfway through the organization, she hugged my waist and sighed. Baby, I really don't want you to go. When you came back from the vacation last time, I still didn't believe that you had let go of that pretentious guy. Clyde, I didn't expect that you're leaving just like this. Sigh. Just let him not be able to find you and regret it. I patted my roommate's arm and gently shook my head. Actually, I wanted to say, Clyde definitely wouldn't regret it. Without my obstruction, he and the female protagonist would only be more affectionate and sweet. But before I could say it, I lowered my head and took a look, and immediately noticed the diamond bracelet on my wrist. How could I have forgotten this? This bracelet was given to me by Clyde's mother the year we graduated from high school. At that time, Clyde and I were admitted to the same university, and our two families got together to hold an entrance celebration banquet. When the banquet was about to end, Clyde's mother pulled me to the balcony. She took out a luxurious and delicate bracelet with a smile and put it on my wrist. Keep it, Luna. We went to an auction that day, and Clyde took a fancy to this. When you go to university, take care of each other, and the two of you should be fine. This bracelet looked very expensive at first glance, and I originally wanted to refuse it. But after declining several times and really not being able to turn it down, I finally accepted it. When we came out, I happened to see Clyde. He turned his head from the dining table, and his gaze fixed on my wrist. For a moment, his cheeks seemed to turn red, but soon his brows furrowed again, and he coughed twice. Why did my mom give you the bracelet? This was just bought for fun at the auction. Forget it. I think it looks pretty good on you. Then don't take it off. This was the first gift Clyde gave me, and it was also the only one. I was happy for a long time after that day. Clyde's family bought a large flat for him in this city, also because of the relationship between our two families. Clyde's parents had specifically reserved a room for me in it. They said that if I couldn't get along well with my roommates at school, I would have another place to go. In fact, I didn't come here often, but I couldn't resist the enthusiasm of Clyde's mother. So I also bought some clothes and daily necessities and put them in the room. There were also many gifts that I usually gave to Clyde. Every time he said he didn't like them and then directly threw them in this room. I touched the bracelet on my wrist. Now that I was leaving, it was time to do a good cleanup. The next day, I took a taxi to the house in the city center. Clyde hadn't come back yet. Naturally, there was no one in the house. However, I knew the password of the front door, which was specifically told to me by Clyde's mother at that time. But when I entered it, I found that at some point, Clyde had already changed it. I frowned. I tried several more. My birthday, Clyde's birthday. I even looked up the birthday of the female protagonist, Hedda, from the campus address book. But it was wrong. All of them were wrong. There was no other way. So I had to call Clyde. I called him several times, but he didn't answer. Just when I was about to run out of patience, finally, his leisurely and lazy voice came from the other end of the phone. Luna. Hey, why are you calling me? Who said they were going to get lost and never appear in front of me for the rest of their life? It hasn't been long. And you can't hold your temper anymore. As if he had let go of some worry. Clyde laughed. His tone became much more relaxed unconsciously. Didn't you say you were interested in diving? Just come over if you want to have fun. I think there are still a few rooms in the hotel. If you want one, I'll talk to the lobby manager and reserve it for you. I took a deep breath and quickly interrupted him. No, Clyde. Don't reserve a room for me. I don't want to go. I'm at your door now. Can you tell me the password? I have something to do and need to go in. For a moment, no one spoke. Then there was a click. It seemed that Clyde had lit a lighter. He started smoking again. I had told him many times that I hated the smell. But it seemed that he had never taken it to heart. Clyde's voice was cold. What's the matter? You don't have much stuff in your room, do you? Just some clothes and cosmetics. What's up? Are you planning to pack your luggage and run away abroad? My heart suddenly skipped a beat. Instinctively, I didn't want Clyde to know about my study exchange abroad now. Before leaving, I just wanted to quietly finish what I had to do. I didn't want any unnecessary troubles to occur. So I sighed and casually found an excuse. I denied his statement. Aren't we going to celebrate New Year's Eve in a week? I prepared a gift for you and put it in the house first. I'll give you a surprise then. In previous years, Clyde and I had always spent New Year's Eve together. Sometimes it was with both of our families. Sometimes it was with our friends. But no matter what, at the moment when the 0-hour bell rang, we were facing each other. But this year it wouldn't be the same. My tutor informed me. My application for studying abroad had been approved by the school. The departure time was exactly on that day. So at 0 o'clock this time, I should be on the plane with the other exchange students of the same batch. The next moment, as if he had let down his guard, Clyde chuckled and told me the password of the house. 0904. You didn't even guess that. So stupid. This is the day when we went to university together. It turned out to be the day we started school. I was a bit surprised, but I didn't think too much about it. After hanging up the phone, I first took off the bracelet on my wrist, put it in a red velvet box, and placed it in a prominent position near the entrance. Then I went to the room and sorted out all my things. Clyde was right. I didn't have much luggage, just some clothes and cosmetics. A small suitcase could hold all of them. But what he didn't know was that besides these, what I really wanted to take away was something else. I opened the drawer under the desk. In the most corner of it was an envelope. Inside was a long piece of paper. It was a list of all the things I had written down every year that I wanted to do with Clyde in the future. To go to a concert with thousands of people. To go bungee jumping, diving, and see the aurora. To travel around the world. To climb snowy mountains. There were so many things. When Clyde was in a good mood, I would pretend to be casual and carefully mention some of these plans to him. The thesis is almost done. The tutor said we don't have to stay in the laboratory all the time during the holiday this year. I recently saw a short video of diving, and it looks really interesting. Do you want to try it? Clyde didn't reply to me. He lowered his head and typed on his phone. It seemed that he was chatting with someone. After a long while, he raised his head and glanced at me lightly. What did you say? I didn't catch it. Hedda is looking for me. We can talk about it next time if you have something. But more than a month later, after the final exams were over, the results of Clyde's mathematics competition were also announced. To celebrate, he really booked a flight ticket to Hainan. I thought he did it because of what I said that day. I waited happily, looking forward to it. It wasn't until his plane with his friends took off that I realized I wasn't on the invitation list at all from beginning to end. During this trip, many people thought that Clyde wasn't in high spirits. It was he who brought up the idea of diving. But he didn't seem interested at all and didn't participate in many activities. He just sat alone by the beach, holding his phone and constantly scrolling through it, as if waiting for someone's message. Some people were afraid that he had something to deal with at school and asked if he needed to go back first. He just shook his head. It wasn't until that Luna, whom he always disliked, called that Clyde became lively again. After hanging up the phone, he stood up, stretched his body for a long time. He smiled at the sea. I told you she couldn't hold on for so long. So she was preparing a New Year's gift. It's really boring. He turned around and made a suggestion to his friends. Didn't we originally book to celebrate New Year's Eve on the island and then go back the next day? How about changing the itinerary? You can come to my house for a party that day. By the way, Luna hates the smell of smoke. Don't smoke when the time comes. The plane landed on the last day of the year. When he finally drove to the city center, it was almost evening. Standing outside the door, Clyde suddenly felt his heart beating faster. So many thoughts were swirling chaotically in his mind. It was so mysterious, and she had to prepare it so long in advance. Clyde put one hand on the door. He touched the pocket of his overcoat with the other hand. There was a gift he brought back from Hainan in it. He took a deep breath and tried to calm himself down. This was the first time he had been separated from Luna for so long, and he was really not used to it. She should be in the room now. She must be unhappy because she didn't go diving. After seeing her later, he would comfort her a few words and then give her the gift. She should be as carefree and happy as before. Thinking like this, the group of friends behind him started to make noise. Open the door. Clyde, didn't you say you were going to take us to your house to celebrate New Year's Eve? Luna is here too. Right. We haven't seen her for a long time. Of course. Clyde said Luna has been preparing a gift these days and brewing a surprise. Clyde felt that he couldn't hold back the smile on his lips. For a moment, he felt like a husband who had taken a group of stupid children to have fun and was now coming home to have his wife's meal. After entering the password, the door opened. Stop making noise. Be quiet. All of you. There was no one in the room. The large flat of several hundred square meters still looked empty even after 6 or 7 people entered it. Everyone was stunned. Where's Luna? Weren't we supposed to celebrate New Year's Eve together? Where is she? Did she go out? Clyde didn't say anything and ignored anyone. He frowned tightly and started to open the doors of each room one by one. There was no one. Still no one. Where had Luna gone? It was clearly agreed upon. The mood that had just been lifted suddenly dropped again. Clyde picked up his phone and was about to make a call. One of his close roommates suddenly ran over from the living room. He was holding a box wrapped in red velvet in his hand. Clyde, look at this. Is this the gift Luna gave you? I saw it placed right in the middle of the coffee table. And your name is written on it. It was a beautifully packaged box. There was a sticky note on the top with 3 lines of small characters written on it. For Clyde, I wish you could get what you love. And I wish myself a free and magnanimous future. Luna. Clyde smiled softly as if he had let out a sigh of relief. Is this all she prepared for so long? So sentimental. He tore off the sticky note and put it in his pocket. Then he carefully opened the box. Just one look. Clyde was stunned. It was a bracelet. He had chosen it himself. In the summer after graduating from high school, he quietly stood behind the door and watched his mother put it on Luna's wrist. It was very beautiful and really suited her. He had thought she would wear it all the time for a long, long time. But it had only been a few years. Why did she just leave it behind? A feeling of extreme panic suddenly spread through his whole body. Clyde lowered his head, found Luna's chat window, and sent a voice message. Then a red exclamation mark popped up instantly. The other party has added you to the blacklist. What a beautiful diamond bracelet. Someone came over. But why is it a woman's bracelet? Could it be that Luna is giving this to Hedda on behalf of Clyde? Clyde suddenly turned around and pushed that person away. The corners of his eyes were red, and his lips were tightly pursed. His whole body's emotions seemed to be suppressed to the extreme, and his body was slightly trembling. Shut up. What nonsense are you talking? He borrowed another person's phone beside him and called Luna again, but the result was still the same. The call couldn't be connected. He tried another number, and then another. It was all the same. It seemed that she had blocked all of Clyde's group of friends at once. Hedda came over, took his wrist, and comforted him softly. Clyde, don't be in a hurry. Luna has her own things to do. Even if she doesn't come, we can celebrate New Year's Eve together. Isn't it the same? Clyde pulled his hand back. For the first time, he felt a sense of resistance to Hedda's touch. How could it be the same? 1,000 people or even 10,000 people couldn't compare to one Luna. At the moment of 0 o'clock, the two of them had never been separated. He took a step back, frowning tightly. He continued to scroll through his phone, wanting to ask others if they knew where she was now. The next moment, a school notification pop-up window suddenly jumped out. The list of some outstanding students from our school who will go on an exchange program to overseas schools this year is now being publicly announced. He clicked on it. He saw that familiar name at a glance. There were a total of 5 students from our school who were going on an exchange program to the UK, and one of them was actually an acquaintance of mine, my deskmate in primary school. I was so surprised. And he had changed a lot. In primary school, this person looked short and clumsy. He was always wearing a thick down jacket and happily following behind me. He was always asking me some extremely childish questions. Luna, how do you do the long division algorithm? What is a multiple? Can you explain it to me? I didn't know how to do the last composition topic. Luna, I want to see what you wrote. In the 5th grade, he transferred to another city. I heard that his parents were the leaders of a national-level scientific research project and had to go to the Northwest Desert to complete a very important confidential task. We never contacted each other again. Until now. Someone called out my name from behind. Luna, long time no see. I slowly turned around. After 10 years, the little boy who always tugged at my school bag asking me to wait for him had grown into a man. He was wearing a dark gray overcoat and looked almost 19 meters tall. He took off his mask, revealing a handsome face as clear and handsome as that of a celebrity. I'm Davis. Do you remember? Happy New Year, Luna. I'm majoring in theoretical physics, and Davis is majoring in applied mathematics. The 2 departments are only separated by a tree-lined road, but within this distance of just 5 minutes. In the whole 3 years, we never ran into each other even once. Fortunately, we both applied for this exchange program. After seeing the admission list, I immediately went to your department to inquire. I didn't expect it to be you. Davis said that he actually tried to come back and look for me once. It was during high school. His parents' project was almost completed, and he finally got the opportunity to travel out of the city. So he took the train and returned to the original place. When we separated, we were still young. We didn't have a telephone or a mobile phone. So the chance of meeting again was actually very, very small. But he was still persistent and returned to the primary school. He asked my junior high school from the head teacher and then asked about my high school. Then he stood at the school gate, hoping to meet me when I finished school. But he didn't wait for me. Instead, he waited for Clyde. He was playing basketball, coming out from the back door of the playground to buy water at the grocery store. He turned his head and his eyes fixed on Davis. Then he stood still. You look familiar. You're not from our school. Who are you looking for? He bit his lips, and his eyes were gloomy and sharp. I think I recognize you. Are you the student from class 2 who transferred from No. 1 primary school? Could Clyde really recognize Davis? I was a bit surprised. He was in class 4 in primary school, not in our class. I thought he wouldn't have any impression. But Davis shook his head. No. Weren't you often going to and from school together in primary school? I always followed behind you and asked you questions. And he would look at me with a fierce gaze, as if I was stealing something from him. I guess he remembered me from that time. Davis hesitated for a moment. He said slowly, I asked him if you were at school that day. He told me. He said your whole family moved away and would never come back. He looked into my eyes. I asked other classmates and found out the high school you graduated from. Actually, you didn't leave, did you? So, if it hadn't been for what Clyde did, Davis and I might have met a long time ago. Why did he do that? It was simply unreasonable. The 2 of us talked like this until we checked the tickets and got on the plane. Then we met up with the other classmates. Our seats were all close to each other, and we could take care of each other along the way. Although the other people traveling with us were also academic elites from various departments, they were unexpectedly easy to get along with. We shared each other's snacks along the way and talked about the theses we were writing recently. Just like this. We spent more than 10 hours on the flight. I was wrapped in a blanket and looking at the undulating clouds outside the window. Suddenly, I remembered the words my tutor said to encourage me to go on the exchange study. Maybe I really should go out and see more of the world. The outside world is actually clear and vast. The senior students from the laboratory came to pick us up at the airport specially. They were very enthusiastic. They carried our luggage all the way back to the school dormitory. From what they said, I learned that the school had also launched an Instagram official account specifically for our project to promote it. But there was only the list of people. Not the specific exchange school. That was fine. Before getting on the plane, I deleted Clyde and all his friends. After lying to Clyde last time that I would spend New Year's Eve with him, I made up my mind to cut off from his small circle. So I didn't want them to know where I was going either. Of course, Clyde probably didn't care at all. I've had a pretty peaceful few weeks recently. I went to classes, read books, and then did some experiments. The research direction of Davis overlapped with mine. The two of us often went to the library to read books together, and then exchanged the theses and conference papers we had read recently. Sometimes he would also come to find me with his computer. He would type formulas while watching me fiddle with the experimental equipment. When the building closed, we would walk slowly back to the dormitory together. My life started to become very regular, except that occasionally, in the dead of night, I would receive calls from some classmates I didn't often contact before. Under the pretext of greeting me, they would ask me indirectly where I was now, which research institute I was in, how I was doing, and what kind of people were around me. I wasn't familiar with them during classes, and we didn't talk much. We only added each other's contact information because of the courses. Now that they specifically called, I'm afraid it's because of someone else behind the scenes. I basically ignored them. I just perfunctorily replied a few words and that was it. Later, such calls became fewer. I thought things would just pass like this. Until recently, after I finished the experiment and just had lunch with Davis, a strange number called. It was Clyde. It should be late at night on his side. Luna, didn't we agree to celebrate New Year's Eve together? Probably because he had drunk a lot of wine. Clyde's voice sounded a bit hoarse and a bit confused. But I waited for you all night and looked for you all night. Luna, you just left me a bracelet. You tell me, you don't want that bracelet anymore. Are you also going to throw me in the trash? There were other people on the other end of the phone. His brothers seemed to be grabbing the phone to talk, as if they wanted me to hear. Luna, when will you come back? Why did you block all of us just because you had a quarrel with Clyde? I'm not used to not being able to eat the chocolate cake you made. Clyde has been drinking these days. When he's drunk, he still calls your name. We're also feeling bad. Where are you studying? We'll take a plane to see you. I remembered the ending of the supporting female character in the original text that I saw when I first awakened. In that, his friends didn't like me, even though I tried my best to integrate into their group, giving gifts, making snacks, and learning about their hobbies and habits. It was still useless. They still liked and valued Hedda. Later, Clyde went on a date with Hedda. They were afraid that I would tell Clyde's parents. They tricked me into a villa and locked me up. That day, Luna had a fever, felt extremely uncomfortable, couldn't catch her breath, and almost fainted. And she didn't have a mobile phone. In order to go to the hospital, she climbed out of the window. As a result, it was late at night and the road was slippery in the rain. A car lost control and crashed into her, running over her lower leg. Even though I haven't experienced those plots in the novel, even though that was just a Luna in a parallel world that had nothing to do with me. But after seeing those words and then hearing what Clyde's friends said, I just felt a bit disgusted. I tightened my fingers. Without saying a word, I hung up the phone directly, probably because the expression on my face was really bad. Davis looked at me. What's wrong? I gritted my teeth and let out a cold snort. Clyde, such a disgusting person. He was taken aback, and then smiled slightly. He will definitely come to find you. Luna, no matter what, I'm on your side. Davis was really right. Clyde did fly over. All along, it was me chasing after him, but this time it seemed different. He stood at the door of our laboratory, wearing a light overcoat and a scarf around his neck. It seemed that he had dressed up carefully, but he still couldn't hide his pale face and the gloomy state of his whole person. There was a dark blue tint under his eyelids, as if he hadn't slept well. He had become much thinner. Luna. He smiled softly, raised his arm, and shook the several large bags in his hand. My mom asked me to bring these to you. She has been making all kinds of food at home these days, like beef jerky, cake rolls, snowflake cookies, grilled sausages and so on. I tasted them, and they all tasted good. She asked me to bring you some for sure. Although Clyde was annoying. But Clyde's mother was different. She had been very kind to me since I was a child. When I was a child, my parents were busy with work, so they left me at Clyde's home. Clyde had a room full of toys and CDs, and she always let me play with them and watch them first. Sometimes when I quarreled with Clyde, she would also stand by my side. Luna is a girl. What are you arguing about as a boy? With such a good temper as Luna's, how could you even quarrel with her? I'm telling you, you'll regret it in the future. Don't come crying to your mom, probably knowing that I would never reject Auntie's kindness. Clyde also called his mother. It seemed that Clyde's mother on the other end of the phone didn't know that the two of us had quarreled. She thought that Clyde was simply going abroad to have fun with me. Luna, I heard that you went on an exchange program. I haven't seen your parents these days. It was Clyde who told me. Our family's business is in the country, and he may not be able to go abroad often in the future. I have to trouble you to show him around more. Before I could speak, Clyde took the phone back. He let out an, got it. Mom, don't worry. I pursed my lips and rolled my eyes big time. I was really speechless. In order to finish the errand, I quickened my pace and started to take him around the campus. Look, this is the library, the cafeteria, the gymnasium, the art hall. Clyde was holding a bunch of heavy things in his hand. Plus, he had just taken a flight for more than 10 hours and hadn't adjusted to the time difference yet. So he looked a bit tired. He barely followed behind me, and he was so tired that he was staggering. But he still didn't say a word. He tried to smile and talk to me. It's really nice. Luna, the place where you study now is really beautiful. Even though I told him many times to go back to the hotel and rest first, he still shook his head. I'm not tired. It's really okay. I have to say that he is completely different from what he used to be. What did he say about me back then? A tag-along. Can't be driven away. So annoying. I was getting a bit annoyed and didn't want to entangle with him anymore. I paused and turned around to look at him coldly. I threw back the words he had said to me word for word. Clyde, can you have some self-respect? Can't you see that I'm trying to drive you away? Why are you always following me like a tag-along? You're really annoying like this. Clyde's face suddenly turned gloomy. His lips twitched, and his fingers clenched and then loosened. Just as I turned to leave, when I thought things should end like this, he chased after me in big strides and firmly grabbed my wrist. Don't go. Luna, don't go. Listen to me. Clyde's voice was trembling, as if he had used up all his strength. I apologize to you. During the time you were away, I thought a lot. I know that I didn't do many things well. I'm duplicitous, stubbornly concerned about face, don't know how to respect others, and often treat you coldly. I deserve to be damned. But can you not sentence me to death yet? Give me another chance. Okay. He looked at me. He put his hand into the pocket of his overcoat and slowly took out a velvet box. I looked down. It was exactly the one I left when I returned the bracelet to him. There was also a note tied to it. Clyde took a deep breath and tried to smile. This is what you left on New Year's Eve. I read the words on it several times almost every day. I wish you could get what you love. And I wish myself a free and magnanimous future. But Luna, I like you. If the old Clyde could have said these words to me, I'm afraid I would have jumped up in excitement. But now it's different. Luna has also grown up. I've seen a broader world. I've met more people. The original small world can no longer hold me back. I gently pulled my hand out and shook my head. No, Clyde, you probably got it wrong. I wrote those words just because I simply thought that you and Hedda were a perfect match. And I just received an email from the laboratory here, offering me research and work opportunities. I may stay here for a while longer, and I'm not sure when I'll return to the country in a few years. Just like I said before, let's break off our relationship. Clyde will take over his family's company after graduation. His family's business is quite special. They can't open a branch office abroad, and most of the senior managers also need to report the number of times they go abroad in a year. So when I really made this decision, it meant that my contact with Clyde was completely terminated. He looked at me deeply, as if he had lost all his strength. His whole back bent slightly. He explained to me in a flustered and feeble way. I have no relationship with Hedda. I took care of her just because her hometown is far away and she doesn't have any relatives she knows here. But what did it have to do with me? I turned around. I casually waved my arm. I'll accept your mom's kindness. Clyde, you don't need to tell me these things. Anyway, I don't like you anymore. Goodbye forever. After saying that, I secretly looked at the person who had just passed by the tree-lined road. The young man was holding a stack of materials, and it seemed that he had just come out of the library. I don't know how much he heard. I ran over and pounced on Davis's back. "Why didn't you say hello to me just now?" I said. "I don't like Clyde." "Did you hear that?" The tips of Davis's ears turned red. "Then what kind of person do you like?" I poked his dimple. "What do you think?" Epilogue. Luna's dream list. Before 0 o'clock, Clyde drove everyone away. He searched every corner of the room again, hoping to find some traces that Luna had left behind. But there were none. He couldn't find anything no matter how hard he looked, until in the trash can in the corner, he saw the shredded pieces of waste paper. He didn't know why. He had a hunch that it was left by her. So Clyde spent the whole night gluing those pieces of waste paper together. He pieced together a list of things Luna wants to do with Clyde. The first item he saw on it was to go diving in Hainan. Clyde must not remember that when we were kids, our two families went on an outing in the suburbs, and I once fell into a reservoir. At that time, the adults were preparing lunch next to the RV, and no one noticed me at all. As a result, Clyde jumped down and fished me out. He's my savior. I have to follow him closely. I also need to learn how to swim so that he can see that I won't cause such a big trouble next time. Clyde stared blankly at those sentences. He didn't know that this was the reason why Luna wanted to go to Hainan. He thought it was just a casual idea. As if he couldn't catch his breath, Clyde suddenly felt so uncomfortable. He squatted down, picked up his phone, and clicked on the report on the school's Instagram official account again. But he unexpectedly saw another person's name. Davis. The person he disliked very much. Clyde couldn't explain the reason clearly. Probably because when they were in primary school, this little boy always followed behind Luna, chattering away like a little tagalong. It was finally that he transferred to another school and left. But he just had to come back and look for her. Now he had reunited with Luna in such a way. Clyde suddenly felt a pang of anxiety in his heart. He couldn't help but think, during the time in abroad, would Luna develop a good impression of Davis? Would she forget about him? Would she no longer forgive him? As it turned out, Luna really didn't want him anymore. The password of the house was still the original 0904. It was said to be the day of the start of school. But in fact, it was the first day when the two of them took a plane trip alone. Clyde had never changed this password. It was hard to say whether it was to wait for Luna to come back. But she never walked into this house again. After graduating, he entered the family company. He started to take over the business. There was no longer any chance for him to look for her. In those few years, he felt that he began to become dull and numb. He no longer kept in touch with those former friends. The companies of many of their families more or less relied on the Clyde family or the Lynn family. After losing their backing, their businesses gradually declined and started to go downhill. Some of them were originally playboys. In order to still maintain their luxurious and indulgent lives, they began to take risks and engage in shady businesses. In the end, they were brought to justice. Some were used as bargaining chips for interests by their families and exchanged with their enemies to gain a chance to breathe. And their endings were even worse. Some became completely disheartened after their companies went bankrupt and just lay in their rented rooms every day, idling away and waiting for death. As for Hedda, she married a rich man who was 14 years older than her. It was said that the other party had a wild lifestyle, but she didn't mind at all. But Clyde didn't care about all these things anymore. Now, apart from working, the rest of the time, he would take the note that Luna had torn up back then and pick out one by one the things that he could complete now. For example, he went to see a concert alone. He went skydiving and bungee jumping alone. When he saw the news of Luna's engagement to Davis in the alumni group, Clyde was on a snowy mountain. He looked at the photo of the two of them over and over again, zooming in and out on it many times. No, he just couldn't figure it out. How did it come to this? It was snowing heavily on the snowy mountain that day, and the wind was howling. Someone ran past beside him. He heard the staff shouting that an avalanche had been detected and that everyone had to be evacuated immediately. He stood up. Then he sat back down. Forget it, he thought. Let the whole story freeze frame here. Clyde closed his eyes. At the moment when the heavy snow came crashing down, he stretched out his hand, pretending to hug the Luna who used to look at him with eyes full of love when they were young.